Wow, I'm already recording, so you know, because I didn't want to mess up and end up not hitting record in my enamored state.
That's the best way to do it. Often, a lot of the best things are said in the conversation before a podcast, so it's good to record everything.
I love it. I love it. This is my heart's racing. This is an incredible experience for me.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you.
No, I mean it really is. It's an honor to be talking with you. I think I said to you in the Instagram before, I've had probably 10,000 one-sided conversations with you over the last like 8 years, you know, and I share your work all the time. And I just want to thank you because I know that you're prolifically productive and deliberate, you know, with your life. And so to share this moment with me is, it's like, I know how disciplined you are. So this is a gift that you're already giving me. And I want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for staying up late as well. I'll try when I do my interviews because I'm on a book at the moment, so I'll try not to be distracted from it. So it's nice for me to be able to, because it's 6:30 here. It's nice for me to be able to do it early. So I appreciate you staying up so late to do it for me.
No, it's like you said, you know, staying up and having coffee with your heroes. That's what it's all about, right? And that's what this. Yeah. That's what this moment is for me. So 100%.
When you hit the right frequency, you're in the room, aren't you? That's it. It's not like an invite. It's not like someone lets you in or pushes you out. If you're vibrating at the right level, you're just in the room. That's always a great sign, I think.
I love that. I love that. So I'm going to do a brief introduction. For people who don't know who you are, Geoff, which to me is a shame that the whole world doesn't know you. You should be a household name in my mind. You know, you're a BAFTA winning writer and author, right? The Divine CEO I have right here, which is an incredibly profound. This is one of the more difficult books that I've read some of the books that you've talked about a lot on your older podcasts, you know, In Search of the Miraculous. I've got Beelzebub's Tales of My Grandson. Like those are books. Those are the ways that you have informed me. And so this book, you say some really, I haven't even gotten through it all the way yet because it's like I have to take it in stride. But you know, you're a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Retaliation with Orlando Bloom. You're just a creative tour de force, right? And you're a martial arts master that can kill in 60 languages, as you say. But I could also say that Geoff is a factory worker that could sweep the floor as much as he can sweep a leg. But something about that seems dissonant, right? And that's what I really want to talk to you about because above all else, to me, you're a guiding light and a living totem to the pursuit of truth through love. Like you said, the frequency just a little bit ago.
Yeah.
So I discovered your work actually through the Conquer Your Fear episode of the London Real podcast that you did with Brian Rose all those years ago. And, you know, that's really the first thing that I show people when I talk about Geoff Thompson. I'm like, just go watch this because I think it has such a foundational just approach to who you are and your story. And I'm going to put that link in the notes of this episode, but I call myself a wizard of intentional serendipity. And I love tracing the interconnectedness of the golden threads of Indra's net, right, through my life. Can you share the story about how you wound up on the London Real podcast? Because really, that's exactly why you're here now, because that's how I discovered you, right?
Yeah. I'm the same as you. I have an inner guide, and it's like a divine sat nav, and I listen to it. In the Old Testament, God says to Moses, "I'm going to send angels before you. They're going to clear the ground, and they speak as me. But when they speak, listen to them, because it's me speaking, and don't question them, and don't go against them, because they won't be happy if you go against them." You know, so you've asked for this guiding spirit. So It's not a playground thing. We've got to follow it. So for me, when I was on that particular tour, I was doing a book tour. I was absolutely on the burn of it. So every place I went, it was like, I'd say to my wife, I wonder who we're meant to meet today. Now I'd listen for the signal. I'd listen for the sign, so you might be in a place where there's 30 or 40 different heads and lots of them are, big faces and names and, they've got all the accoutrements, but that doesn't mean anything. The kid you end up speaking to might be someone stacking shelves, in a bookshop. It might be, somebody that speaks to you. You stop and have a cup of tea with a rough sleeper. Could be anybody. It could be just something random. So I was always listening for this, and I had an email from South Africa from a guy who said, I'm a struggling student and I really like your work, but I can't afford your book. Will you send me one as a gift? And I said to my wife, look at this cheeky guy. I said, but I like him. I said, there's something about his honesty. He just said, I'll pay you back one day. Anyway, he's one of thousands of people I was writing to, because I had an open forum for about 30 years, as in my number, everything about me was open. That was the stage of development I was going through. I'd hurt a lot of people and I needed to atone, and my atonement came through service. So I just said to Sharon, send him a copy of the book. I never really thought any more of it. I didn't think any more of it at all. And then I got this invite out of the blue, probably 10 years later, to do London Real. And I checked London Real out and I thought, this is a really good podcast. They have a lot of, even at that stage, I had a lot of high profile people on. And I'm kind of more cultish than high profile. People know me in specific areas, but I wasn't high profile. I just thought, I wonder why they've got me on. But I was grateful. So I said, yeah, I'll come and do it. Anyway, I turned up outside London Real. There was this young guy there. He said, you don't remember me? I said, I don't know. He said, I'm the guy you sent the free watch for back to in South Africa all those years ago. I told you I'd pay you back. He was a really, really nice lad. And we did this. Well, I've done 3 podcasts with them now, but that led on to, it's led on to where we are now. But it's led on to lots and lots of mentoring, lots of work, lots of connections. Every time I do London Real, I got invited on the James English show and lots of other big stuff. Just places where you can do this, where you can just plant a seed. Same with the BAFTA. We did a book signing in Manchester. We had a big following there, and I said to my wife, I wonder who we're meant to meet today. And when I met people, there were miracles, especially at that period of time. I mean, there were literal miracles. People were healed. People were inspired. All sorts of things happened because my proximity was so strong. I was on the carpet of proximity. And at that time, if anybody stood on the carpet of proximity with me, they were on the carpet of proximity. So some miraculous things happened. And they felt as natural as having a cup of tea with somebody. They didn't feel like miracles. It just, I'd be with somebody and they'd say, I've got this debilitating illness and I can't be cured. And I'd look and I'd say, well, do you want to be cured? And they would say, well, you don't understand the doctors. So I'd never mind the doctors, but do you want to be cured?
All right.
And they'd go, yeah. I said, well, come and train with us. Come to my Thursday class and let's just see what happens. And then they would just come into this room full of these massively inspiring people. And over a period of time, they would heal. Sometimes people would come and heal of very bad illnesses and very bad mental disorders on a session. Excuse me. And other times, it would happen over a period of time. It was nothing to do with me. I just put them in the proximity. So that was just normal to me at that time. With the BAFTA, I was teaching in Manchester and I was looking around thinking who I'm meant to meet. I did my talk and then afterwards this young lad came up to me and said, I'm a big fan of your work. And he said, I'm stacking shelves here at the moment, but I want to be a writer. Can I interview you? Perhaps I'll try and sell it to the big issue. Excuse me. And I said, I was trying to think where I'd fit it in because I was on a 32-city tour But I felt it. I felt the connection. So I just said, look, I'm in Huddersfield next week, which is a close city to Manchester. And I said, why don't you pop over there and have a couple of hours with me? Anyway, he ended up spending the day with me the next week. We did the interview, and I just didn't think any more of it because you were dealing with so many people. The idea was that you do what you're asked to do and then you move on. You're not keeping score. And then about a week or 2 weeks later, I had a phone call from this lad's sister. His name was Ben. He said, just wanted to say I'm grateful to you for meeting my brother. He's got depression. He was a good writer, but he said he's struggling and really helped him. And then she said, I'm a filmmaker. We're really interested in your story. We do documentaries. Would you be interested in coming talking to us? I said, yeah, of course, yeah. So I met them, and they were like award-winning documentary people. You know, did some quite serious documentaries. And she said, well, we're kind of edging into drama as well. Do you fancy writing as a short film? I said, yeah, I'll write you a short film. I just really like them. Right. Again, I didn't really think much of it. Anyway, that film got BAFTA nominated. The second film I did with them won a BAFTA. And that led on later to this feature film I did. It led on to me doing the Romans 12:20 with the Shamazin brothers. That led on to the film with Retaliation with Orlando Bloom. So this kind of serendipity in a bookshop in Manchester with a kid who was of no profit to me. That's how you can measure, you know, if someone's got a character, how they treat somebody who's of no profit. Because if you think somebody's of no profit to you, you're not looking closely enough. Because everybody is, as you said, with Indra's web, everybody is intricately connected. When I give to somebody else, I'm giving to myself. So I always was aware of that. And my giving was directed by intuition, by my inner tutor. So that led on to, well, it's still unfolding now, you know, and
well, like, even just with this conversation, because like I said, I mean, you heard the intuition, the still small voice. Out of love, you give a book, you wind up there. And then, like you said, with your own book, you wind up in a million places. And here's something I don't know. I don't know whether to curse you or thank you, but because of the way that you talk about when you were writing Watch My Back, and you wrote it, you know, with a pen. It came through the nub of a pen. I'm working on a book right now. It's actually titled Serendipity According to Frances. I lost my dog. I was with her for 14 years and had to say goodbye this year. And it keyed in this moment for me. I've always wanted to write a book, and I've always thought, like, that's such a daunting task. But then I started writing about 5 days after she passed. And I was like, well, I can't write a book in a single setting, and I have all these different things that I'm doing, but I can commit to writing at least a page a day, right? So if I do that over the course of 365 days, then I'll have my book. And, you know, we live in a culture of such immediacy, and people lack that kind of patience. But like we see with training, I was a personal trainer for a long time. All of these things, small, consistent effort really adds up to the most magical effort, things that we find in our life, I think, you know.
Very true.
But so, you know, if we say that you're a BAFTA winning writer, right, we could also say that you're a factory worker. But one of those statements is of the past, and one of those holds power in the present, right? So you talk about apophatic theology and finding who we are by sorting through who we're not, like a kind of like a snake shedding its skin. So what's the difference between saying that you are a factory worker and you're a BAFTA winning writer? Because like we said, one of those things doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah, well, I'm not really either. I mean,
right, that's it.
Things that I've achieved. You know, I'm a soul working through this body, and I'm perfecting myself through a dualistic body and through a dualistic reality. It's the perfect kind of whetstone to sharpen the blade on. So dualism within the body and within the world. I mean, obviously, within the very center of me, there's no dualism. There's just an absolute. There's a oneness. There's a singularity. Like they call it in.
It's so funny that you say the singularity while you're thinking, because I have a question for you about the singularity.
Geometric point. Yeah.
Yes,
Sorry, carry on. Yeah. So you find that singularity within you. That is the jewel that in the cross, in the cross section of every part of Indra's net. And when we connected to that singularity, we reflect every other jewel in the net throughout infinity. That's very true in my life. And the answers to everything are in that center point. That center point is what Maria Ushaba would call the boss. It's the soul that sits between heaven and earth and creates this floating bridge of heaven and earth, he calls it, or the chi, or the philosopher's stone, or this creative output that you have. So if we can place our soul between these two opposing forces, between duality, and sit as the link in the dualistic universe, we can connect to everything. So I can be a factory worker. I can experience myself as a factory worker. I can experience myself as a BAFTA winning writer. I can experience myself, sitting with Orlando Bloom and working. I can experience myself doing what I'm doing here now. None of them are any greater or any lesser. Right. If everybody's connected by the web, by Indra's net or Indra's web, and everybody reflects everybody else. And that's when you understand that, when you start to get it, you recognize that every service I do is a self-service. Every harm I do is self-harm. That's not an idea. It's not a concept. I'm talking about something that shatters concept, that eats precepts, concepts and cognitions for breakfast. They don't mean anything there. This is just a reality. Once you get that, you are falling over yourself to get rid of the parts of you that are selfish and just engage the parts of you that are selfless and want to serve, because that means everything you do affects everyone else. So the universe, or the watchers, the Benai Elohim, they're watching, they see, they notice this. When you start to work from a place of love, not just love, but from a place of understanding, of course I'm going to serve somebody. Why wouldn't I? It's serving myself. But when they notice you, they start to bring a little bit more work to you. They start to put you in the vicinity of other teachers. And the other teachers tend to just prod you. They're just little prods, and not necessarily to teach you what you need to do, because what you need to do is underneath. It's there. And they just try and prod you to draw out the parts of you that aren't unique, the parts of you that are aberrations, old concepts, old precepts, old beliefs, fears, excuses, doubts. They're looking for the Amalek, the doubting warriors that are inside everybody. And they just help you to prod them out so you can see them, so you can see them as separate from you, and then you can individuate them into consciousness. So it's not like you annihilate these old parasites or these demons. It's not like you annihilate them. It's that you convert them, because they contain a spark of light. So we're converting them. So the teachers that you're placed in front of, some of them will speak to you. Some of them will be silent. Some of them will be corporeal. Some of them will be invisible. It doesn't really make any difference. Some of them will point at you and say, I see this aberration. Other people will just stand with you quietly and be still and gentle, and your aberrations will present themselves to be converted because they're on the carpet of proximity. So good teachers tend to do that. Often they don't even know they're doing it. Often our best teachers are people that just provoke us. We don't even know we're being provoked. But what it does is it allows us to see the parts of us that are, that lovely thing in Zen where they say, if you beat somebody with a Zen stick, they learn. If there's somebody there to be beaten, who is it? Who is it that's there to be beaten? You know what I mean? It's like, and a Zen stick can be literally someone hitting you and you're going, well, I don't understand that. I'm confused. The confusion is the part of you that comes out and presents itself separately and allows you, if you watch it closely, if you lean into the jagged edges of it and watch it closely, it now enables you to see the outline or the silhouette of the mind itself. So you go, oh, that's not actually real. That's impermanent, not real. But you can't do that until it's provoked out of you. So the job then, as Jung says, is that when it's provoked and it rises up, it rises to claim or be claimed. And so you have to look at it and go, oh, I see that. And that's interesting, but it's not me. And I'm going to let that go. But to do that, as Aurobindo says, you have to be able to sit in the very center of the passions and let the passions race through your body and sit and observe that until it dissipates. And that might mean absorbing 99% of that fear, that anxiety, that lust, that jealousy. And that point that you need to sit in is the jewel at the cross section in Indra's web.
How about that? Yeah.
That's the stone that's in the Old Testament, they would call that the stone. In the New Testament, they would call that the stone that the builders rejected.
The cornerstone.
The cornerstone, yeah.
Yeah. So
it's the cornerstone.
I love that. And it kind of goes back to the toilet brush. I've heard you talk about that before when, even a person online, because we get a lot of that with our current culture, the social media and stuff. And I think there was one space where you said, you can't go online and start slagging off and think that you're a gem. You're just a toilet brush, showing people where they need to clean. I love that. I love that concept. But, I always say that we're strangers even unto ourselves. And if we can look at ourselves as a mystery in that way, that we're learning, like you just said, I mean, that's kind of what I was trying to hope we could pull out from that whole question about the difference between, who we are, not just our achievements or not just our failures, but like that there's something else. But there's one thing that I know you talk about, a person who starts a diet on Friday isn't the same person who has to show up to it on Monday. The person who starts at the gym on Monday isn't the same person who has to show up 3 days later.
Yeah.
Can you explain more about that and how we find that's that soul and that we move forward with?
Well, it's what I always used to say to people. I'm not really interested in what you eat. I'm interested in what you're feeding. It's not about what you're eating. It's about what you're feeding. We can refine the food. That's okay. But what are you feeding? What is it that you're covering? What is it that you're in covenant with? And what will happen if you start feeding that? What it will do is it'll rise up and say, we had an agreement. I'll keep my ugly face out of the way as long as you keep feeding me. So we have to look at what people are feeding. And we have to look at, I'm not really interested in whether or not you turn up on Monday for the training. I'm interested in who it isn't that turns up. So when I say come and train on Monday, the command itself isn't important. What is important is what it brings out of you. So if on the Monday morning at 4 a.m. you wake up and there's a part of you that just goes, I can't do this, I'm interested in speaking to him. I used to say in my class, I'm not really interested in talking to you. I'm interested in talking to the person that comes out when I say it's time for animal day. It's time to spar. It's time, or in the gym, it's time to there's no queue at the squat rack. Why is that? Let's go to the squat rack. Why isn't anybody doing cleans?
Yeah.
So you say, so the idea is that, these provocations or these acid bath experiences draw out the part of us that we need to look at. So I'm interested in seeing who I'm not. And I can't see who I'm not until I head towards my desires if I have a desire to write a book and I approach that. And as I sit down, 10 voices tell me that I'm not worthy or that there's no point. And that, you're wasting your time. And whoever said you could write anyway, and who's going to publish it? And I'm interested in all those voices and our ability to sit in the very center in this place of singularity and watch those voices. And obviously, that this eye of the storm, we could call it, we're not going to see this unless there is a hurricane. So obviously sometimes crisis comes into our life and it forces us to find a center. We have to, because we're suffering so much. And other times, if you're like us and we're in a shamanic space or a mystical space, we're actually going out and looking for that. This is what I want to do. And I want to do this not so much because I want to do it. I want to do it to see what's trying to stop me. So if I'm going to walk from A to B, I won't know what the obstructions are until I start walking. They'll be invisible. I won't know they're there. But the moment I walk towards them, they will present themselves in front of me as subvocalizations. They'll even manifest as people, and they'll tell you what's standing between you and your the object you want to walk towards. So that's when I used to do my teaching. That's basically what we used to do. We used to create a manufactured environment that had its own egregore, that had its own spirit around it, that would draw out the impurities of everybody so they could see them. That's it. My job was to let people see them. And then if they wanted to, I could help them to individuate them. I could help them to process them. And it's important to process them because they contain light. They contain consciousness or knowledge. In the center of every ignorance, there is a knowledge hidden. So we need to draw that out. But that, again, that might mean sitting in the very center of these passions. Because what happens is when you provoke a shadow, it rises up. And because we're so habituated into engaging and identifying with the shadow, there's hardly any gear change. It just suddenly, we go from nothing to being jealous or angry or fearful. So the danger once it has risen is that the shadow thinks it's you, or the parasite, or what Eckhart Tolle would call the pain body. It thinks it's you. Mm-hmm. But more worrying, you think it's you. Because once it's engaged you are incarnated with it. It's got your thinking, it's got your sensibility, and it uses your body like a human playground and often does things, that are not appropriate. And then when it recedes back into unconsciousness, we're left to pick up the bill. Yeah. So the idea is we just need to see what they are. And if you go and stand in front of somebody that's on the carpet of proximity, they will just rise out. It might rise out as an anger. Who the hell does this guy think he is? What's he got? What does he know? It might rise as a judgment. Mm-hmm. I had one guy watch one of my videos and he said, I just can't watch the guy. I just can't take my eye off that ear. He's got that bloody ear. I can't. Do you know what I mean? So there's a guy that's hugely distracted. There's a distraction. I can't hear what he's saying. I'm too afraid to hear what he's saying. So I'm going to project and look at that. I mean, he might think I've got an ugly ear, but I'm very proud of my ear.
You should be, yeah. It's a nice decoration.
We want to be able to see them, and we can only see them if they're provoked. The danger is that when they're provoked, there tends to be a coupling and an ascent. And then, before we know it, there's an enforced bombardment of the will force.
When I was in art school, I just want to say this real quick because it reminds me of something. When I was in art school, I read this book, probably right out of high school. I read this book called Transforming Your Dragons. And it sounds a lot about like this notion, the difference between the Western dragon and, the Eastern dragon, and the notion of, kind of protecting a treasure. And that once you got through that dragon, you would transform, what was once envy into, something more profound. But I'll never forget the time when I was reading the book and the guy was saying I don't know if it was a hypnotism technique or if it was just where I was at, and he was really calling it out. But he said, your eyes are probably getting heavy. You're getting tired. You're getting distracted. You want to put this book down. And he was basically calling out that person, like you said, that doesn't show up. And I immediately read through the rest of the book because I was like, I'll be damned if I'm going to let some shadow stop me from, like, I stayed up all night. I finished through the whole book because, I was like, I'm not going to let that, thing get in the way.
Insightful author.
Yeah. So, it's funny because this whole talk, it's like, I only get to meet the easy Geoff, the divine, uncomplicated version, the one I'm talking to now, the one I get to read in the books, the always aligned, version. But you talk about, catching yourself with your wife, Sharon, like when you maybe slip up, you have like a moment, like we all do. Right. And you say, I'm sorry, that wasn't me. Yeah. And I love that practice. But at some point, I also think of like the extreme in this, like an abusive spouse or something that apologizes after every incident. You know, so my question there is, at what point do our actions speak louder than our words? Like, how many times do we get to say, I'm sorry, that wasn't me, while we're exhibiting certain behavior? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying that for myself because it's something that I'm like, man, I even at my best moments, when I've created that space that you're talking about, and I slip up and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't me. How many times do I really get that card? I mean, I know for myself personally, it's an infinite amount of times, and Grace would say an infinite amount of times, but for the other person to understand what I'm telling them about who I am.
They might not hang around. You might lose a lot of people.
Sure.
There's a real danger that venal sin means to miss the target. Venal sin is when we do things that don't necessarily disconnect us from God or from our source. You know, so we can get away with it a little bit, but it's painful. But venal sin, if it becomes our habitus, venal sin can accumulate and become a mortal sin, which eventually disconnects us from our source, and that is painful. And that will disconnect us from everybody decent around us. We'll find ourselves surrounded by people that are at the same negative frequency as us. As you progress on the journey, believe me, it becomes too painful to fall out of alignment. Your angels speak to you. They speak to you. They're real, but they speak to you through the sensual body. And whatever it is that you listen to most, they will provoke that. Might be a glass smashes in your hand because you've fallen out of alignment. It might just smash instantly. In demonology, they call this proto-passion. In other words, my version of preemption. We've got to catch these things at the level of provocation. We've got to catch it very quickly.
Preemption from a demon. This is something I've never heard you say before. This is pretty crazy.
Yeah, this is some of the stuff I'm writing at the moment.
Yeah.
It's called proto-passion. The same thing. It's exactly the same thing. But
no, that's amazing. Yeah.
If you think that a demon it comes from the word divide, it means something in us that's divided. So whether you see that in a person outside a nightclub, whether you see it in the bathroom mirror, or whether you see it as an incorporeal being, it's all the same, because it works through, hasn't got a body, so it works through people. And it's not personal. It's just one of the dualistic forces that we are able to contend with. And if we can, and if we have the ability to sit on the very jewel of Indra's net, we can convert these energies. If they come anywhere near this floating big bridge of heaven, they will be burned up in the volition of your work. So these can become very beneficial to us if we're centered and if we're aligned. So we have to make sure that there comes a point as you get more and more developed where you won't be able to fall out. Not that you won't fall out of alignment, you will, but when you do, it's so painful that you will want to find your center again very, very quickly. And you'll do that through redress, through apology, through confession, whatever it is you need to do. You'll just say, that was me, I take full responsibility. That doesn't mean if we keep doing it, the people around us will stay. Some of them won't. But from my experience, if we're able to catch it very quickly and we're genuine and contrite in our remorse, you know, it's coming from a place of love. It has a divine signature and it melts everything below it. So it's just, you'll get to a point where falling out of alignment is no longer something you will allow to do, because it'd be so painful. It's so excruciatingly painful. But it's not someone punishing you. It's just somebody grabbing your arm and pulling you from the street because there's a car coming. It's a protection, but it's a painful protection. So you learn not to keep falling into that place. Excuse me. You understand that once you've got this spirit in you, once this spirit has entered you, what you call the holy dove or the philosopher's stone, the attractive forces, whatever you want to call it, once it's in you, it takes over your causal will. So you're united with it. You are a united being, and your causal will is connected to the divine will through this spirit. You start to create very profound things in the world. But if you allow any kind of negativity to come in, if you misuse it, if you find yourself mentoring somebody and looking at their breasts instead of thinking about their soul, or you're looking at their bank balance instead of, and what they can do for you instead of looking at their, at helping them, you fall out of alignment. This powerful energy that's coming through you, that you're using to create cause in the world, instead of bringing light to the world and spirit, the imposition of spirit, you're bringing darkness to the world. You're bringing a dark spirit, or you're bringing ignorance, whichever way you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And then once you put ignorance into the world, it's an elemental, especially when you're working at a higher level. It becomes an elemental that is going to go out and start doing dark work. So once you have this covenant with the divine, with a higher spirit, and this spirit enters you and you're in covenant with it, you can't break that covenant. And if there's a danger that you fall out of alignment, because it's human to err, you will be jarred back into alignment very, very quickly, really quickly. Mm. And it's so painful. You'll know it, because the feelings you have will be absolutely disproportionate to the incident that you're in front of. Mm. It's something Christ says in the New Testament: if your eye offends, pluck it out. If your hand offends, cut it off. Yeah. He's basically saying, look, you might linger on that girl that's wearing little more than a dark tan. Mm. You might linger on that, and you might not think it's a bad thing, but it creates a fracture in your hermetic seal. And if there's a fracture, 20 demons will come through it in a heartbeat. So it's not the lingering look that's wrong, that's negative. It's the fact that the lingering look means that you've been baited, you've taken the provocation, and you're starting to couple. Once you start to couple, there'll be a consent. And once there's a consent, there's passion. Once there's passion, then we have, we think we're in charge of this thing that we do. And then suddenly there's an enforced abduction of the will, and we haven't got our will anymore. Then we have to fight like mad to get the will back. This is a bit like standing on a nightclub door and being frightened of knocking back the gangster that's trying to get in, even though you should. So you let him in to try and curry favour. And then suddenly he's got 20 mates inside and they're running the club, not you. Mm-hmm. So it's these little things need to be, same as on the door, preemption. Excuse me.
They need to be bounced out.
Yeah, we preempt a situation. We kill it at the level of provocation. So proto-passion is killing, is knocking back negative thoughts the moment they rise. In the Old Testament, it says that we should thank somebody who breaks our little ones off the rocks. And it's an encoded, it's an encrypted code. And the cipher is that we've got to kill these thoughts. We've got to dissolve them and knock them back the moment they rise. That's the level of provocation. The moment we take the bait, they're in. We're coupling. Once we're coupling, there's an ascent. Suddenly we're talking about it in our head. There's a conversation, and then suddenly we don't know the difference. We are quantumly entangled with an energy form, and we don't know which is us and which is it. And all we can do then, if we've got the wherewithal, is to come back to our singularity and then go through the process of removing it, which can be complicated and painful. Sure. But we can always do that. We can always come back to that. But the key is to catch it at the level of provocation. I had one of the guys on my course said he had this lesson and he got it. He understood it. He said he was in a meeting the week after we did this lesson, and he said he was because he had a very volatile energy. He was kind of a high-end businessman. He said, I was in a meeting. He said, and somebody said something and I was gone. He said, I stood up and I said, I am not going to have you. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. This is me. This is nothing to He caught it mid-speech and stopped it. But and people just love the fact that he stopped himself.
Sure.
But once the damage is done, once our causal body has been taken over, our body of conscious will, and it acts in the world, it leaves an effect. And that effect has to be dealt with, has to be picked up. what they say about, Jekyll and Hyde. Jekyll's always causing problems that Mr. Hyde has got to pick up the bill for.
Yeah.
That's just it's just a parable about the duality within people. So it's learning to, if you imagine a light bulb, JJ, so you've got the negative terminal, the positive terminal, and then we've got a filament that connects the two. When the filament connects the two, the filament burns. It creates negative and puts negative and positive into light. And the light that comes out is what you would call the attractive forces or the chi, But in order so if we imagine that we have got negative and positive energies in us, our soul, the gemstone that sits, at the cross section of Indra's web, that's what connects these two powerful forces and creates light from them. So the idea is that we develop our soul body, so that it's tempered, so that it has a very high melting point, so that we can place ourselves between those two forces and create light. When we create light, when we're creating it consistently, that is the philosopher's stone. Because then we take that light or that knowledge, that energy, and we train it, we perfect it, and we put it into like some of your beautiful art or one of my books, or we put it into a conversation like this. So we have the ability to place ourselves as the conduit or as the bridge between negative and positive energies. When we do that, we can create light. We can create spirit. So if I'm able to train that and control that, I can use my hand and place my hand on you and like we talk about the imposition of spirit through hand, through sound, through kotadharma, through breath, just through presence alone, through a written word. I can store my attractive forces in a book and put them out there. Like you're in the other side of the world. You've got the attractive forces that were gifted to me. My process of putting myself between those two forces was, I want to write this book. I can't write this book. I don't know what I'm doing. I placed my soul between those two forces and created that book. That book came through me. So that book is filled with attractive forces that are working. When you open the page, spirit comes out of it and it speaks to you. And it's so rich that it's not me.
Yeah.
I didn't write that book. I placed myself as I placed myself as the conduit between these forces that want it written, forces that don't want it written. I placed myself between the two and created light.
That makes me think of one of the things that I share that you say a lot about the person that's 100-watt light bulb looking for 1,000 watts, right? And how it will just blow a psyche, a spirit. And for the first time, now that you're talking about it in that regard of these two poles, that's a part of it there too, right? Because that energy then that has to come between, there's going to be a potential extreme negative side as well as the extreme positive side. And that's where some of that split can happen in a person's psyche.
But the idea, JJ, is that we have to temper and prepare the soul. We have to temper and prepare the soul so that it has a high burning point, so that it can sit between these two forces. How do we temper the soul? We can only temper the soul if it's united on all 5 levels. If the soul has 5 levels, from the gross physical body to the breath body to the mind and intellect body to the causal body, the body of conscious will, and the soul itself, all of those need to be united. When they're united, we unite the Atman and the Brahman, the soul and the super soul, the soul and God unite. Then we can become a vessel. So we temper the soul by winning back all of the territories. People think they own the territories, but they don't have any control of the territories. They certainly don't have control of their own autonomy, because they can't stop themselves from thinking about things, can't stop themselves from doing things that they shouldn't do. They can't. Most people want to change the world, but they can't change their own waistline.
Right.
And they don't know that the thoughts that they have are not their thoughts. They're not aware that there is a place in them where they can sit in the very center of thoughts and just observe them, like a man standing in the middle of a busy marketplace. Or like if you look at the Kaaba in the very center of Mecca. You know, the little black box in the very center of Mecca. And you see all the Muslims walking around it. It's a very strong representation of the geometric point. And everything in our life should just orchestrate itself around that. If we lose center of the Kaaba, of the center, is chaos. So we have to have alignment. We have to have control of those different bodies. If we don't have control of those different bodies, when we try and bring these two forces together, as you know, with many artists, it just burns them out.
Right.
They create the most incredible work, but they can't sustain it because it just burns them out. They end up taking drink or drugs, or it's a tremendously powerful energy that will be experienced as fear, as terror, as massive anxiety, as depression. It's a living energy.
Right.
If we're going to be in covenant with it, we need to be at least equally worthy of that. You know, we like, if you look at, say, a tungsten strip, they don't just place a tungsten strip between these two powerful forces. They don't do that. What they do is they prepare the tungsten strip. They put it through processes of heat and burning and chemical reaction in order to get it to a very, very high burning point. And then once they put it between these two forces, they place it in a hermetically sealed bulb. Within the hermetically sealed bulb, they put inert gases. So that's what protects the tungsten filament from blowing out. If there's a crack in the light bulb, air will rush in, oxygen, and there'll be a glow of light, and then it will just explode.
That's the flash of so many people that we see, right? Like at high levels of, you know, celebrity or success sometimes. It's so crazy to me that you've said hermetically sealed multiple times. And I've actually been writing it in this book. In the pages I wrote today, I wrote hermetically sealed. And it's just one of those, another little serendipitous bulbs, you know, that happened. But I want to ask you, you know, talking to you, and I said this, I think, in some of the messages back and forth, in many ways, it's like I'm having a conversation with God. And as you say, when you embrace God, you become God. And that's what you do so often. So for me, thinking about what questions am I going to ask Geoff Thompson? It's like, well, what questions am I going to ask God? Right. And so I know that you have conversations with your inner tutor, with God constantly. But if that external version that we look at in Krishna, Muhammad, Buddha, Christ, if you could ask, you know, Jesus or the Christ one thing, what question, what would you ask? What would you ask Christ if you could come? I know you ask Christ probably 1,000 questions a day, but if you had because right now you're the physical representation of it to me. So what would you ask? What would you ask yourself? What would you ask the Christ?
Same as what I ask him every day. Someone said to me, what do you ask in meditation? What do you ask in prayer? There's only one question. How may I serve you? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know the plan. I don't know what I'm doing, but I know that you do know. And I know that I am part of you. So please show me how I may serve you. That's all I ask. I'm going to meet JJ today. I don't know what he needs to hear. Please show me how I may serve you. I don't ask how to serve JJ. I don't ask how to serve 200 people if I do a talk. I don't go there. I just say, how do I serve you? Because if God is omniscient and omnipotent and omnipresent, which he is, then if I'm serving God, I'm serving everybody, including me. So I just say, this is a level of intelligence that I've got to where I know I don't know anything. I do know I have to talk to God. And if I know how to talk to God, of course I know everything. So I ask God to work through me. I ask God to let me be his instrument or his vessel. And I try to deal with so many people. I've dealt with so many people over the years that you don't keep count, and you don't ever let yourself fall into that place of, oh, yeah, well, you know, when I was in the room, you should have seen how people reacted to me, and you should have seen the miracles. I'm aware that what happens doesn't happen from me, it happens through me. But my part in that is to make myself, is to temper my soul, win back my territories, physical body, right the way up to, you know, breath body, you know, the mind and intellect, which is all the study, and then using the causal will to do that. When you use the causal will, to win back all those territories, which is tremendously difficult. As you know, just getting your palate right is tremendously difficult. So when you use your causal body to win all those things back, you develop a very, very strong causal body that's able to sit, that's able to command itself to sit in the very center of these opposing energies and create light. We know that if we're going to create a piece of work that has God in it, we're going to have to burn to do it. What we do, we place ourselves between these two energies. The tungsten filament doesn't just create light, it burns, but it's protected. It's protected by the inert gases, which are, the inert gases in our body. If I'm hermetically sealed, the inert gases are the spirit that I bring in, the ki or the chi or the prana. When I do my breath work, my pranayama, I fill my body, not just with oxygen, but I fill my whole body with spirit. So that this spirit protects my soul when it places itself between these two forces. My hermetic seal is that I don't allow myself to drift into the left-hand side, which is the selfish side, or in Judaism they would call the evil inclination. I don't fall into what's in this for me. The moment I fall into what's in this for me, I've lost my connection. So the hermetic seal needs to be it needs to be permanent. This is what you would call in Christianity being in constant prayer. Again, it's an encrypted code. The cipher is that we're not dabbling with this. We're not dipping in and out of it. This is too powerful a force to be flirting with. If we're in it, we're in it. We're in it for good. And then when we work and we do our work, we are a vessel for this light. We give birth to spirit in the world. Again, there's lots of people call it lots of things. In Kabbalah, they would call it a divine spark or chokhmah. This divine spark comes down, but it's not just a matter of receiving a spark of wisdom. We still have to put the 100 hours in to get the paint onto the canvas. We still have to perfect it. We still have to work that energy and bring it in, prepare it, bring it from, I think in Judaism they call it zimsum. This energy is reduced so it can come through us. Then we have to refine it and perfect it, train it, and put it out into the world. I love that idea. So you see a Qigong guy or a martial arts guy, and he'll train it through a physical technique, or he'll train it, through a movement. You'll get an orator who will train it through his speaking. A painter like you will train those forces through his art. I'll train it through, through the writing. Right. And obviously, if I'm really centered, if I'm completely centered, I can sit in a cafe where nobody knows me, and that cafe can become more profitable and can increase, get more custom, and people in it can be inspired and healed just because I'm there. That's the level of spirit once it's in you. But you would never fall into the belief that it's me, that it's this personality, this temporal personality, Geoff Thompson. It's not an ego. The ego has to be reduced so that consciousness can expand. So we know, we give it over to God. We give the praise over to God because we know it's not us. And that's absolutely true. But it comes through us and it picks up our flavors. It picks up our stories and experiences and it uses all those. But the energy that is carried on that raft of our experience is spirit, is pure spirit.
So how do we, that brings me to a question that I did have written down here too. How do we harmonize that notion of being proof of what's possible? Like you're talking about, like the BAFTA becomes this totem of possibility that you can show people, right?
Yeah.
Versus, when you cast your pearls before swine, they might, say that you're bragging and not recognize. And then of course the further extreme is that you then become a guru to the point of people potentially worshiping you in a wrong way, right? Because you're just trying to show. So it's like it's such a delicate dance. It's such a balance, because on one end you want to be the proof, and then it's like then you've got to contend with people saying you're bragging, and then you got on the other side potentially people worshiping you, which is not the ideal either. Yeah.
So it's all irrelevant, really.
Sure.
You just let it come through you, and it falls where it falls.
Right.
It triggers what it triggers. It provokes what it provokes. It does whatever it needs to do. It's nothing to do with me. I'm a postman. I just deliver the letter. I don't concern myself with what happens once it's gone through the door. And if the guy runs out and says, you've just given me a letter with £20,000 in, I'm so grateful. I go, it's nice of you to say, but it's not from me. You know what I'm saying? So I'm working on instruction. I'm working on command. It's unfathomable. You would never work it out. It's like light coming through water. You know, if you look at a frog in the bottom of the stream, you're not looking at where the frog is. You're looking at the light reflecting through the water. You might look at the frog and you think it's directly in front of you, but it's probably over to the left or the right. The light calculates the billions of possible routes out of the water to your eye and offers the optimum route. You could never work that out or calculate it. Spirit is exactly the same. We could never calculate what is meant to, what is needed to do, where we needed to go and what we needed to achieve. All we can do is follow the command, and that's the command of intuition. So we turn up, we deliver it, and then we move on. So you're very right. You have to be very careful of falling out of alignment and believing it's you. So if people start to worship you and people start to, if people start to see you as the deliverer, that you have to be very clear with them. You can't buy into the
postman. I love that.
Yeah, I'm just a postman. Yeah.
No,
I'm really grateful. What you've said is grateful, and I'll pass it on. But I'm just a postman. Sure. And this isn't something you say lightly. This is something you know.
Right.
The more you know that, the more you're certain of that, the more you're humble in that, the more you will receive. You know, the more of this energy will come to you, because you're not a spoiled vessel. You're not going to bring this through and taint it. It's got to come through you clean. You play your part. You align yourself. You do the work, and it's a privilege to be able to do that. But you never take credit for it. This is very hard for people to understand, because they want followers, they want praise, they want validation. I don't want any of that. I'm not saying
that's where the rubber hits the road, though, Geoff, because and that's why I'm asking, because for me, like I said, there's that delicate balance, and I don't worship Geoff Thompson. I just know that I'm talking to an aligned version of my own self. And I know you don't want the quote unquote followers, but I feel like the more people that know and access and understand this kind of information through people like yourself, the more the world will get to heal. I mean, I know it will happen in its time, and I know that that's all part of the process, but it's one of those things where I try to spread Geoff Thompson as much as I can, just because I know that's spreading love. You know what I mean?
You know what I'm saying, though, JD. It's not that I don't want followers. Sure. I don't want them. I'm not bothered either way. It's not like I'm rejecting them. You know, it's not like I'm saying, I don't want them. I'm just following instruction. Right. So if God wants to put me in front of more people, I'll go and be in front of more people. Sure. If he wants me, if my purpose on this earth is just to talk to one Indian kid who turns out to be Gandhi, and I don't know that. Maybe I die before he matriculates into a Gandhi. Sure. No, but my job, it's not for me to know what my job is, other than the fact that I'm told to go here and talk to this person, and I purely follow intuition. Well, that brings us full circle back. Who's to say what's big and small in the whole plan of it? So, because I don't understand, the full plan, I only understand my part in it, my dharma. I just follow where I'm meant to go, and then miracles happen. Then I end up on big stages doing things because I followed something that didn't feel like it was going to lead to that. It was disparate. Like the book that you gave. I mean, that kind of brings us full circle back to that, because it's like that was one of those things. I got one question here for you that might be a little bit off that you've not heard so far. So last year I got into, I don't know if you're familiar with NFTs or blockchain technology, but the blockchain is kind of like this digital Akashic record is the way I look at it. And there's a lot of this metaverse stuff being built. And I've got this Bob Ross inspired project, and it kind of reminds me of the Wu Tao Zu
concept of, you know, clapping hands and then walking into the painting.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I'm literally creating with a friend of mine this digital world, and it kind of reminds me of you talking about like the Lego moving, and where we can just like walk into it virtually. And it's like, it's weird because I hear all these people talking about the metaverse, and they don't realize that there have been centuries of wisdom talking about the metaphysical. And
yeah.
it's where, you know, we create reality in this universe. So are you familiar at all with the concept of metaverse, and what do you think about it if you've heard it at all?
The concept you're talking about now about this,
Yeah, just like a
creating it,
virtual world basically that we're creating, and then people are kind of going in and exploring it.
yeah. Well, I think it sounds like it's going to act as a great simile for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can, you know, all good films and all good art give people an access to, you know, because that's what we're in anyway, aren't we? We are in a kind of virtual reality. It's a manufactured reality that literally changes according to, you know, where our perception is. If we're in covenant with negative perceptions, we'll be surrounded by negativity, and we'll find the proof that negativity is real. It's very quantum. So I think anything that acts as a simile, and if your intuition is drawing you towards it, and you can tell with the intuition that's what it's being drawn towards it, and it's something you've got to follow. I like the idea of it because it's basically showing people how we're already living, where we are. They don't realize that, but
that's exactly it. So that brings me to that. I think the first video that I sent you, where I was kind of coming to this observation that the algorithm in social media, whether it's YouTube videos or your Facebook feed or whatever, is really synonymous with the law of attraction.
Yeah.
And, you know, I quote you through that video like 12 different times. But so I see people kick back against the companies, like, you know, whether it be Facebook or whatever, and say that they need to be more responsible. But it's like, I feel like we need to be more responsible. It's kind of like just what you're saying. You'll find confirmation. And so in a way, the algorithm has become this symbol of something that we've had throughout, you know, human existence.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, one, do you think that the algorithm can even be changed, or is it some sort of like Platonic law that's come down from the ether? And do you think it should be changed if it could be changed?
It's interesting because you're slightly saying to me, I'm at the cinema and I'm watching this horror film. Can the film be changed? And I say, well, it can be changed, but not at the level of the screen. You know, it's your film. You know, you're sitting in your own front room and it's your projector. You've just forgotten. We create monsters. We forget we've created them. Then we design tools and weapons to fight the very enemy, the very monster that we've created and forgotten. So we're creating all this ourselves. So they can be changed if they're not doing what we want them to do. Then we just change ourselves. The moment you bring yourself back to your center, to your geometric point, to your singularity, and sit there, all those things become irrelevant. The world is irrelevant. The world is a game. So it's, you know, we're not here to change the world. We're here to perfect ourselves in a dualistic kind of class. It's like you come into a martial arts class where you're going to be pitting yourself against the best judoka on the planet. You are going to improve, or you're going to get dropped on your head. You know, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and there's going to be times when you come out of it and you forget why you're there. The idea is that if there's no opposition, then we can't finesse ourselves. We need a whetstone to sharpen ourselves against. So if I don't like, you know, the algorithms you're talking about, they don't exist for me.
Right.
They have no existence in my reality because I don't give them any existence. So all I do is I make sure that everything I output comes from a place of love. So I find the carpet of proximity, and I do my very best to stand on it. Sometimes I find myself rummaging through the bins, you know, on the hard pavement, and I have to bring myself back to the carpet of proximity. And my job is to, as I see it, is to follow the command of my intuition and place myself before people to show that the to show that as a proof of possibility. If you are gentle, you're creating a reality that you want, that, you know, that is beautiful, and everything you do accords with, to quote Aquinas, everything you do accords with wisdom and love. You are free. The moment you can consistently work from a place that accords with wisdom and love, you have risen above the evil inclination or the negative inclination or the selfish inclination. You've created enough rocket fuel, enough prana or spiritual fuel to go to war with perception and convert it into a higher plane. So the idea is that, you know, we stand in front of the people who have said, I would like to live better, I'd like to live differently. You can say, well, this is what I did. This is how I did it. You have to be proof of that, you know, and you have to be congruent. And part of being congruent is saying, I slip, I make mistakes, I'm in a body. But if I wasn't getting tapped out now and again, I couldn't really consider myself to be in the room, could I?
Right.
One of my friends said to me, I haven't been tapped out in 3 months, Geoff. And it was like a quiet conceit. I said, it's because you're not fighting anybody any good.
Right.
And he was really offended. He said, well, how do you know? I said, because you haven't been tapped out in 3 months. I said, I'm getting tapped out every session.
Right.
I said, I'm in a judo class and I'm surrounded by titans. I said, I'm getting tapped out. I said, but my level of growth is like that. It's exponential. I said, if I'm not getting tapped out, how am I going to grow? You know, so it's not that we don't get tapped out, we do. And that's how we continue to grow. You know, we're not in the room if we're not being tapped out. St. Francis, you know, Aurobindo, you know, all of these, you know, all of these great prophets and gurus and saints were still getting tapped out at the level of priesthood, of course, because the pressure, it's not like, as Francis says, you know, the devil is a roaming lion. It's worse than that. He's pressing against the glass at all times. If I'm hermetically sealed, JJ, you know, I'm protected, but the pressure is on the glass at all times. If there's a fracture, it is in. It's not like, did I hear a fracture somewhere? Where's that fracture coming from? It's like, it's in, it's instant. And the more aligned you are, the higher levels of energy you're working with, the more of that pressure there is. Like when I was training with Neil Adams, for instance, in judo, he said to me one day, if you give a 16-stone judoka that much room, he'll climb through it. Yeah. He'll find a gap that small because that's the level we're at. You can't have a bad day in this class. A bad day means you're dropped on your head. Right. So you go in at that level and you have to maintain that level. That level, once you're at that level, it's not difficult to maintain. But the moment you have a week off and go and put your feet up in Spain, you come back, that level's gone. Within a week, you're being tapped out 20 times. So with this kind of stuff, you can't have a day off. Right. But that, I don't mean it to sound like it's a toil, but it's a responsibility. Because if you have a day off and you fall out of alignment, everything is going to rush in. Because it's like having a day off in this kind of practice is just like deliberately placing a crack in the glass or deliberately leaving the safe unlocked. Right. No. We have the power of causation. When we understand how to place ourselves as the boss or the governor between these two forces and create light, we become a very attractive booty for any devil that's roaming the atmosphere, for any force. Sure. So we have to keep that responsibility. So, you know, I don't go to war. I'm not in the position where I'm creating monsters and forgetting about them anymore and then going to war and developing warfare and techniques to fight against the very monsters I've created and forgotten. I'm just aware that instead of trying to fix all the 3-legged chairs in the world, I'm just trying to create 4-legged chairs. Right. Well, so in that regard, like you said, we forget we create the monsters. Another thought that I was going over recently is this notion of artificial intelligence, and it kind of goes along the lines with this metaverse. I see all these, like you said, these metaphors kind of and potential for new learning and understanding the way that we're relating with technology, even so. With artificial intelligence, it seems that some people are afraid and some people are inspired.
And so it's almost as it's the ultimate mirror, you know, from the kind of your concept of infinite mirrors. So it's like people are afraid because they know what's in them, and then they project onto the technology and this reaction formation. So how do you feel about the idea of sentient technology, like a piece of technology that's self-aware?
Well,
what do you like?
I think it's a distraction, because a concept is a sentient being, not just an energy, but a being. A precept is a sentient being. A thought is a sentient being. It's a semi-autonomous thought form. You know, concepts, precepts, cognitions, you know, food, the breath we breathe, everything. It's a panpsychic universe. Everything has intelligence. So if we get too distracted by this is the new enemy, we're missing the enemy that's right in front of us, which is the fact that we are engaging with concepts and precepts every day, not realizing that they are beings. They're real beings. Right. When we go into a covenant, an agreement with an idea, how quickly can it become an ideology? We go into a covenant with a precept or a concept. How quickly can that destroy our life if it's very limited or if it's dogmatic? So I'm saying, when we open our eyes, when we become aware, as we remove the ignorance, the darkness, and our consciousness expands, we see life in everything. Everything communicates with us. So that's what we need to be worried about if we're going to be worried about anything.
Right. Everything
do I want to engage with this precept? Do I want to engage with this suggestion? Somebody's given me a suggestion. If I take it in and I engage and identify with that, suddenly that I'm incarnated by that suggestion, and I'm running around trying to change the world because of a suggestion of, you know, that is a life form living in me. Everything that enters our body is a life form. It's sentient. Some of it's very, very damaging. Some of it's very good for us. Some of it's neutral. So I'm just very careful I'm not worried about artificial intelligence.
Right.
Just very, very discerning about any kind of precept or concept or belief that I take in. I check everything with my inner tutor. Most of it he spits out before I even approach him. It's a bit like John Anderson. When I was working with John Anderson, he was my tutor on the door. He's this legendary character. He was always my acid test. If I wanted to know, you know, if I was going to train in a new system, I would often go to John and say, "What do you think about this, John?" And some of the systems didn't even get to him. They didn't even reach him. They died on the way to going to meet him because they were so ridiculous. Just approaching a man with a combative proximity was enough to scare away these fake concepts, these fake systems.
Right.
Other times I would speak to him and he would we would talk about it, and he would kind of tell me what his thoughts were, you know. So I always take if there's something that I'm going to engage with or identify with, you know, I take it to God. But again, mostly I don't make any decisions at all. My only decision is to turn to God and say, "Is this where you want me?
Right.
Is this what you want me to do? If it's what you want me to do, then I'm going to do it. If I have to lose everything material, I'll do it. And if it's not what you want me to do, please let me see, because I'm not clear. Please show me things as they are," to paraphrase the Prophet Muhammad. Please show me things as they are. So, so the danger is not artificial intelligence. That's a big distraction over here. It's not that it's not interesting. It's very interesting, but it's a distraction because people aren't aware that the concepts and precepts, the information they're taking off the internet, off the television, from friends, from family, from culture, you know, from religion, the ideas they're taking in and living in covenant with in their body are the real danger, because they're not. An idea isn't an idea. An idea is a being. A precept is not. You know, it isn't just a collection of data taken from our sensual experiences. When we take it in, we're taking in a living, sentient energy form. It's made up of lots and lots of tiny little molecules that become a living being. So you know yourself, well, I've had ideas that have taken me into places where I've battered people. I've battered them because of an idea that I've allowed into my head, and it's created a division. And that division has taken me to a place of extreme violence. I've also had concepts that have entered me that have taken me to the path of charity and love and given me a tremendous profit. Some of them have actually put me on the carpet with God. I've actually felt him through a kid in Oxford Street in Piccadilly who was freezing outside, freezing and starving outside 50 food outlets and 20 clothes stores. And I sat with her and put some gloves on her hand. She was a kid, and I saw everything through her. I felt such love. I mean, the world disappeared. There was no world. I was in the abstract, and I felt such love. And I just thought, how can I go and do my stupid job? And this kid, my child, is starving on the street. Right. And I felt God through her. And all it cost me was a pair of cheap £1 cotton gloves.
Right.
I wanted to give her everything I had. But of course, when I gave her love, JJ, I gave her everything I had. I gave her everything I had. That's all she needed.
Sure. Well, and you said you mentioned food in this whole process there, and that love. It's like, Christ says that man should not live by bread alone. But and there was a talk you did on fasting, and you said these 3 words, and you almost just, and again, I know you don't take ownership over it and that whole thing, but I was like, man, that is so. I've meditated on these 3 words so often, because you said food becomes flesh.
Yeah. And
I was like, we hear this, you are what you eat, but we lose sight of what that means because of the cliche doesn't allow us to go deeper into it. But, because you talk about it, your diet is what you read, what you consume, what you were just talking about, all these different facets.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder that we have the idioms like food for thought and chew on that. There's all these different related things. And even digest, that's hard to digest. Yeah. So like when I was a kid, I used to always pick up the Reader's Digest, and the quotable quotes section was always my favorite, and I'm just like, Geoff should be in there with food becomes flesh, and just let people marinate on that for a while, because it really is such a profound thing. So you talk also about, and I know we're getting close to running out of time here. You talk about, basically using imagination and creativity and kind of imagining yourself into that BAFTA, that first BAFTA that you won, right? You also imagined yourself out of it. I remember you talking about that. And so, I listened to, I don't know if you're familiar with Neville Goddard, but I listened to a lot of Neville Goddard's work as well.
I really like him. Yeah.
Yeah. And he talks a lot about the imagined state, and that's where this law of attraction can kind of sound Pollyannish or socks and sandals, like you say a lot of times, and it makes me think of Jim Carrey, who says that, he wishes that everyone could get rich and famous so that they could see that that's not the answer. Yeah. Right. And so many people are working from that void and that state of lack. So there's a challenge, I guess, that I think that maybe you could help illustrate, where that imagined state can be very difficult for people to work from, because they don't know what it feels like, because all they're doing is walking into another void, because they'll never be satisfied when they're searching for something that can't fill the gap that only love can fill. So how can a person use feeling through imagination properly? You know what I mean? To get to that space.
Yeah. Well, it's what we said before, JJ. Before people start working on the magical, they have to perfect the mundane.
Sure.
People want to, getting the imagination right is very difficult, because who's doing the imagining? There's 20 of you in there. You know what I mean? Who's doing it? One person's imagining one thing. Another personality is imagining another. This other personality is, there's Gurdjieff would tell you there's 20, 30, maybe there's 100 in there. You have to get the unity back of your body. You have to win back the territories. So I would say to people, start off by getting control, first of all, of your physical body, because at the moment you don't know who you are. So you don't like the big dilemma I had with my first BAFTA was not that I was this when I won the BAFTA. The problem I had was that when I was able to, the first time I tried to imagine it, had lots of opposition, and it blocked me from imagining it and seeing it. The second time, I killed all that. I created a tunnel, like a light tunnel, and I put myself there, and I was holding it. I felt the weight of it. And then when I got it, I had this massive realization that I can do anything. Nothing is impossible.
Right.
I can have anything. I can go anywhere. But then I fell into a dissonance, because if I can have anything and go anywhere, what's the point of it all? I didn't understand I fell into a massive dissonance. And which of those myriad things should I aim for? And that's when I suddenly realized that I used my imagination in a very powerful way, but I didn't know why I was doing it. And I didn't know what the purpose of that was. And I didn't know what the purpose of having all those things was for. And I didn't know which of those things was meant and why they were meant. And for a good while, I stepped away. It frightened me. And I just thought, I can't do this. I don't understand it. I had a proper cognitive dissonance. Right. So in the end, I went deeply into prayer. And this is when my life started to change. And I said to God, I know that anything is possible. This is a realm of possibilities. I can use the causal body to create, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do or what I'm supposed to do with it. But I know that you do. I know that you know not just what I can do, but what I'm meant to do. There's a place for me here. There's a part I'm meant to play, but I don't know what it is. So please show me how I can serve you. So someone like Buckminster Fuller would say, I want to create things that help millions of people. And I love that concept of, I'm not fishing for one. I need a trawler. I need nets. I need deep water. I want to fish for thousands, millions. So that gave him big ideas, and he was coming from a place of selflessness. So it really aligned with the universe. But I wanted to go bigger than that. So I said, I don't want to serve millions of people. I want to serve God. And if serving God means that my life is dedicated just to serving my child, or just to looking after my mom, or just to, cleaning the garden for old ladies, if that's my dharma, if that's where God wants me to be, that's all I want. Because I know that if I'm serving him, it doesn't matter whether I'm sweeping the floor or whether I'm driving a race car. I'll be serving my purpose in an optimum way. And I know that he knows that. I know that information is there. That's, as you say, that's locked in the Akashic. That's an energy calculating the billions of possible routes that this personality, Geoff Thompson, can follow. And this is the optimum route. That's all I'm interested in. So I just follow the optimum route. I ask for the optimum route and I follow the optimum route. And that always leads me to exactly where I need to go. So just bring me back to the question. What was the question again?
Basically, just how can a person use feeling through imagination properly?
Right. So they first need to find out who they are. The purpose is not to start sitting imagining, because, like you said, Monday's child imagines one thing, Tuesday's child kills that and imagines something else. Right. Wednesday's child doesn't care. He just wants to lie on the settee. You know what I mean? So we've got to figure out who we are. Once we figure out who we are, and we can find out who we are by connecting directly to our source. That's difficult to connect to the source, because at the moment, connecting to the source is like saying, I want to connect to the internet, but I haven't got I haven't got an antenna on my roof and I haven't got the equipment. So, and if I connected something now, I wouldn't have 500 channels. I'd just have snow. So it's about clearing the path so that we can get this connection to God. Lots of the energies that live in us don't want to be connected to the source. They don't want to be connected to God, because they will be converted in the process. They need to be converted. So I go, okay, I need to be an aligned unit. I need to be unified. And then I can connect to my source. And when I connect to my source, I can say, where do you want me? Not this is where I want to be. Just say, where do you want me? I know that you know, where do you want me? And that's the kind of rigor that people are going to need to do. So if you really believe you can change the world, why aren't you mastering the mundane things first? Don't come into the gym and say, I want to push 4 plates if you're struggling with 1 plate.
Right.
You've got to build up to it. So let's get our physical body right. Let's win our territory, because let's win that territory back. Because all those things that are stopping me from mastering my physical body, getting my breath body, they're all things that block me from making this higher connection. Mm-hmm. So people that make a higher connection tend to work their whole life to individuate parts of them that are stopping them. All of these old beliefs that we're in covenant with. So we have to have one covenant, and that covenant is with our source. So I wouldn't start imagining. If you want to start imagining, just start imagining yourself just with, your body in shape, and, just imagine those things, imagine that kind of thing. People struggle to, even with basic grooming, but they want to imagine millions, and they want to imagine miraculous things, but they can't even imagine themselves into cleaning their body once a day, brushing their teeth. Right. So let's use our causal will, because your causal will eventually is the part that's going to sit in and get you to imagine what God wants you to do. So let's use our causal will to master the physical body, to get ourselves in good shape, to start sitting and reading those books that we find difficult, to start making notes, to start, if we're going to write a book, start writing the book. Right. Don't think about it. The dynamic changes massively when you actually initiate and start doing stuff. So start winning over the small things. If you're just trying to imagine the things that you're struggling with at the moment, imagine those. Use your imagination to get those right, and then later on, otherwise you can start that, but otherwise it's like going, well, I want to imagine myself in the ring, with Tyson.
Yeah, you don't want to imagine that.
Yeah, but you can't go out and do a mile run or a 2 mile run.
Right.
There are stages that you need to build through, and that all of that's possible. But if it's going to be possible, it needs to come through this physical vehicle. Mm-hmm. We need to own this physical vehicle. There needs to be one owner in here, not 20 owners, not 50 owners. And that takes brutal honesty. We need to be able to look at ourselves and say, who am I? Mm-hmm. This is what Ramana Maharshi will say, who am I? So I did a little event last week with a few people. And the first thing I did when we sat down to have something to eat is to put a brand new moleskin pad in front of all of them and a pen. Mm. And I said, what is the pad saying to you? Looked at all their faces. And I said, what is it that you don't want to write in that pad? Mm. What don't you want to write in that pad? What don't you want other people to see? What don't you want to see?
Right.
What is it that you don't want to see in the newspaper tomorrow? What is it about your life, your habit, your habits, or, what are you carrying that you don't want to see in that pad? These were amazing people. We had tears in the room.
Sure.
People were sobbing and I'd said, you don't have to write anything down. You can take the pad away. All I'm saying is you want to make a connection to a higher source. These things that are in you are blocking you. Bring them out, individuate them, bring them to light. They contain light, convert them. Even if you just write it onto the page and then burn it. I'm just saying, this is one quick way of showing you what's standing between you and your goals. It's not that people can't create material things, but it will never save them.
Right.
We're talking about aligning to what our unique cause is in this world. And once we find that unique cause, we can start working at it every single day. And if we're called to, we can help other people to do the same. So it's about the acquisition, the conservation, the training, and the imposition of energy. That's it. Right. We bring energy in, we conserve it, we train it, we purify it, and we put it back out again. Right. So before we can start challenging perception, we need to align the body so that we can collect more of this energy, that we can conserve this energy without it being leaked in 50 different places. 50% of it on Facebook and 20% of it on Twitter and 15% of it arguing with my ex-wife and 100% of it on sexual porn and 15% at least on curries that I shouldn't be eating. We're in energy debt all the time, JJ, energy debt. So it's saying, look, you want to break out of the stratosphere of perception. You won't do that on fossil fuel. You need spiritual fuel.
Right.
That's how you challenge perception. That's because all the realities are separated by perception. So I said in order to access spiritual fuel, your body needs to be clean and it needs to have one owner.
Mm-hmm.
If it hasn't got one owner, then it's too dangerous to bring that fuel in, because you might bring, Dr. Jekyll might bring it in, but Mr. Hyde might steal it.
Right.
So it's all about coming back and saying, start on the fundamentals, get your physical body right. Don't pretend that you can be 5 stone overweight like I did and, master anything.
Call yourself,
get yourself in shape. We're not talking about, I'm not talking about stuff in the world. I'm talking about working directly from this higher source.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of people in the world doing things, but, and they're not in great shape, but they're also not doing very good things with their energy. They're creating lots of demonic forces. So this is about us bringing in clean energy, putting out clean energy and training it in the area that we're determined to train. You're determined to train it as an artist. I'm determined to train it as a writer or as a speaker. So find out who you are. Even if your meditation is just that, take up a TM class or a meditation class and just say, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
Read Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now.
Right.
Power of Now is basically a book of exorcism.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of exercising old thought forms, divided thought forms, old perceptions, pain bodies. The beautiful book. It's probably the best book in the world at the moment on this technique. And this technique that Eckhart Tolle talks about is straight from the Old Testament, it's straight from the New Testament, and it is the essence of Buddhism, the absolute essence. It's saying that reality exists at the level of engagement. But coming back to your question, who's engaging?
Right.
And what are they doing with the stuff they're engaging? If you're still gossiping about your friends outside Costa on a Friday afternoon, don't pretend that you've got any free will or any personal autonomy. Because everything is connected. If you're destroying them, you're destroying yourself. If you're destroying them, you're not working from a place of free will. You haven't got autonomy. If you're still struggling with your diet, if you're still struggling to be kind with your husband or your family, that's where the work is. You're waking up every day with the Prophet Muhammad. You're waking up every day with Christ. You're waking up every day with Krishna in your bed, in your house.
Right.
If they're provoking you and they're bringing negative things out of you, then you're absolutely your best teachers. They're showing you who you're not.
I love that. Yeah, that's always one of the finest lessons, of course. In all of this, 2 things. One, I hear you talking about that, what we talked about all the way back at the beginning of this, the smaller, consistent effort, as a personal trainer, people have these wild goals. Yeah, you want to bench 225, but you can't even move the bar yet. And if you try and put too much on too fast, it's going to hurt and it's going to make you not want to come back to the gym. And it's the same thing with all the rest of these, even more so, because this energy this creative energy that we bring through is so powerful. It's in the wrong hands. You see what people do when they're damaged and they take ideas that become ideologies. You see how much damage that brings to the world. So we want to, I wouldn't want anybody out there to wish this energy unless they're absolutely prepared for it, because it is a very real energy. And if you're not prepared for it and you get it by accident, or you cheat it by taking drugs or something, it might destroy you. I've seen perception get kids, about 28-year-old men throwing themselves under a tube train. Perception. I've seen people kill themselves, commit suicide because of a perception, because they've tried to challenge the perception and they're not ready. They're flirting with too many other dark things. And I've seen perception, I've seen belief destroy people. We see people on the internet all the time killing other people with the use of sound, with the use of suggestion, with a perception, with a word that's been used as a sword. These are very real powers. They're very real energies. And when you start to bring in these attractive forces, if your body's not hermetically sealed, if it's not aligned, if you haven't got ownership over all territories, if there's not just one owner, if there's not a singularity, believe me, you'll be like
you'll be like a vault full of gold that's left open. It will attract. It will attract.
That's a good one. Yeah,
thieves and vagabonds.
A vault full of gold left open. I love that.
What it is, yeah.
So,
that's exactly what it is.
The opposite side of that, right? And this will be the last thing. I know I again appreciate your time so much, Geoff. Alan Watts, one time I heard him say that we can change the past from the present. And then I feel like I heard you say almost identically the same thing. But when we forgive someone, we both know about the forgiveness in our own personal lives. We change the past from the present by an act of forgiveness. Yeah. It's we experience like almost like a time traveling, because we change our perspective. Like you say, that whole thing changes. And, I have this really wild thought about the other day about, we time travel through sight. Like when you look at through a telescope, we see a star that may be burnt out 100 years ago, closer to the present reality of that star. And so I think the speed of love has to be even faster than the speed of light, right? But then I think about this notion of change being death, and your talk on the planting bamboo, when you're planting bamboo in the garden and you're trying to free the bamboo from the pots, and they're screaming you can imagine them screaming, "Oh no, he's got a knife. He's going to kill us," right? But change is death. We with so many people, all these perceptions, these things that we're talking about, for people to come into this place, even if it's just with their diet, how do we kill softly? How can we embrace, the power of forgiveness in the face of death, and like with our old selves to come into something new with courage?
I think it's just changing the words a little bit, because I've realized, obviously, with science tells us that nothing dies, nothing can die, but we perceive it as a death. So I like to see it as a conversion. If I challenge an old belief and I end up wrestling with it, the belief that I wrestle with and defeat or subdue doesn't die, it's liberated. The effulgence that's contained in it, the consciousness comes over to me and I expand. So nothing dies, so we're not killing anything. And that's part of the language, and I've probably used it myself, part of the language, that this needs to be killed. But really, I love the Judaic concept that in the Urianic Kabbalah, Hasidism, that they talk about, we want the ultimate aim in this reality is to convert darkness into light. And it sounds very socks and sandals when you say that, but it's really about converting ignorance into knowledge. And knowledge with a capital K is a certainty. As we said before, it's yakin, certainty. The truth is undeniably there. It's obscured by too many precepts and concepts, too many ideas. So when we wrestle with these things, say if we're controlled by food, when we wrestle with that, and we subdue it, and we're able to control our palate, that old perception, or that old addiction, or habitus, is liberated. It's no more. It doesn't exist. But the energy that was in it, the part of it that animated it, that was real, is converted, and you get it. So when we wrestle with these things, when we wrestle with the habit, when we wrestle with a belief, and we subdue it, and we're able to liberate the negative part, a bit like taking a conker out of a shell, or a bit like peeling an orange, taking off the skin in order to reveal the juice. So we liberate the negative, we convert the positive into us. So nothing dies, nothing can die, nothing that's real can die, So we're just looking for the permanent that is hidden in the impermanent. And we may have to wrestle to get that back. And we're not wrestling necessarily with a jacket, or with weapons, because that would probably only exasperate it. We're wrestling, it's an internal wrestle. It's what Muhammad would call the greater jihad, the big fight, which is not trying to fix the world at the level of the screen, but coming back to the very, very center, finding the genesis of it in us, finding out what part of us, what part is in us that is not us, and then liberating that and taking back the energy it's stolen. So that will continue to be the process. Jung would call it individuation, but he said the danger with individuation is that when these energies rise to be brought into conscious knowing, there's a moment where they will try and engage you, try and identify you, and try and couple with you. And that's where there's a real danger of being dragged back down into the unconscious with it. So we have to know where we are when we're going to do that. But we start on the small, I always say we start on the small things. I say to my wife, palette is basics. She said, it's not basics. Palette is advanced. How many people do you know can control palette? You need a very strong will to control palette. You need a very strong will, and you need divine energy to challenge the perception. Because what people do is they try and keep a diet, and then they binge when they're on holiday. That's old perception. If we get our food right, our body will thrive on it. When I had this epiphany some years ago, I'd be going into vegetarian restaurants in London, in Soho, and the food was like speaking to me. I just couldn't believe how beautiful it was now. And so I decided to change all my diet. So everything I ate, everything I brought in gave me that same feeling. So old perception is, this is a temporary thing. I'll blow out when I'm on holiday. I'll blow out at the weekend. That's old perception. That means I'll have the kids in the week. You have the kids at the weekend. I'll have my autonomy in the week. You can have my autonomy at the weekend. The problem is, if I have a bad day or a bad week or a bad fallout with somebody, that autonomy that I give over to you, my habits at the weekend, might last a week or a month or a year. I might never climb back out of it again. Either this enemy is converted, you may say dead, either it's dead or it's still a problem, but there's always going to be a threat there. So it's just about we don't need to be taking on despots in the world. We need to be taking on perceptions. We need to be challenging what's coming into our own mind. How many people do you hear that say, yeah, well, I did my research, and you go, well, what research? You went on a conspiracy site, or you looked in a front of shelf book. That's not research.
Right.
Research is when you go in and say, I don't know what I'm doing. Please lead me to the truth. And that only works if you absolutely want to see the truth. Because people don't want to see the truth, because the truth is painful. As Aeschylus says, knowledge is, the development of knowledge is pain.
Right.
It's very difficult to wake up and suddenly see that we are surrounded by negativity. The world is feeding off negativity. That everybody is walking around with 20 demons in them, and another 20 are waiting for their turn to gossip, to overeat, to overindulge, to be unkind, to go online. There's no power in that. There's no autonomy at all. So I'm saying to people, get your power back. Bring your power back. And it's difficult. It might take you a whole lifetime, and you have to dedicate everything to do it. And I know it can sound really complicated, but to be honest, it is complicated. But it can be as simple as, if your actions don't accord with wisdom and love, don't do them. If there's a part of you that works from a place, that wants to work from a place that's not coming from wisdom and love, it's not you. It's not true. It's not aligned. And once you've got the information, you are certain, and I am absolutely certain about this, that everything you do to yourself. Everything you give for yourself. So if you don't want to see it again, don't give it out. And if you do want to see it again, keep doing it. Make that your habitus. Working from wisdom and love. People like Aquinas, people like Columba, people like Francis, they dedicated their whole life to developing this. They dedicated their whole life, and it's massively challenging. But there's lots of systems out there that that can give you a good pathway. All of the different religions, depending on where you're coming from, that there are revealed religions and there are hidden religions. So if we can go through the revealed religions into the esoteric, there is a message in there just for J.J. Weinberg. There is a message in the Zohar just for you.
Right.
Quantum. You go in there and everything is encrypted, everything is coded, and the cipher is not universal. The cipher is individual. So when you go in, there'll be something in there just for you that nobody else would find, because it's quantumly spread out. It's not like binary. It's not like it's black and white. You might pick up 100 different little notes that you write down, that when you reduce them, they come to one word or one sentence that is specific to you. It's very beautiful and very powerful, but it's there just for you, and it's there just for me. So what I can't really give you. All I can do is try to impose my spirit in a good way to inspire you to go in. I can say to you, there's a room that you can go to where there are letters that you can receive and deliver. They're not my letters. I've got mine here, but there's a place you can go specifically. But I can't give you that, but I can show you how to get there.
Right.
You just got to, you've got to go there as one person. Going through the narrow gate means going through as one person, as one soul, as one identity. You can't take 10 people through there. You can't take 10 personalities. You've got to have an aligned unity. They say that unity is the most powerful force in the universe, and that exists in us. We unite the 5 levels of soul. When we unite them, we automatically connect to the divine. Then we have a covenant. Then we can bring this energy through. Then we can make a difference in a world that can't be changed. We can only make a difference to people so that they can use the world as a whetstone to perfect themselves.
I love it, Geoff. Thank you so much. This has been, like I said, an honor, a pleasure, a privilege. I'm going to continue to share with your work, keep up with your work. What you're working on? Is there anything you can talk about, or is it top secret?
I've got a book coming out next year called 99 Reasons to Forgive.
Okay.
And that's going to come out next year. And I'm currently writing a book called I Kissed a Board Queen, but I wasn't assimilated. Lessons in Overcoming Evil. All about the stuff we're talking about here. That's the working title. And I'm about 180,000 words in at the moment. It's
wow,
big, but there's a lot of information there, but it's all coming down to one thing. And I'll leave you with this. And I read it yesterday from a book by a guy called Matthew Juxon Sullivan.
Okay.
It's a Buddhist book. If you want to check him out, it said he was talking about a tutor, an old tutor who didn't speak very much, but give him three things. He said, I'm going to tell you 3 things. He said, he leaned in to tell me, and I went to speak, and he stopped me. He said, I'm just going to tell you 3 things. I'm not in a conversation with you. And he said, lean into the jagged edges, turn into the swerve. When you've got the message, put the phone down. So it's kind of saying that's what it comes to. You're going to have things come up in your life. If you're going to clean them and convert them, you have to not run away from the discomfort. You have to turn into it. And that is all of Buddhism. That's all of Christianity. That's all of it. It's called dependent arising. Reality exists at the level of engagement. If it rises and we engage it, we give it reality. If it rises and we don't engage it, it falls back into the void. That's it. So, but we can only exercise that if we are in control of that gemstone at the very cross-section of Indra's web. We have to be in control of our part. Once we're in control of that, we can be a reflection of every other gemstone in Indra's web in infinity. We are connected to the akashic of everything. So there's only one thing to do, one thing, and that is find that part in you. Right. And that might, as we said, that might just mean going through all the parts of you that are not you. Discarding, that's an old suit, that's an old suit, that's an old mask. I don't wear that hat anymore. Those shoes don't suit me. Get rid of them until you're naked, like Milarepa in the mountain. Till all he's got left is a cloak, and even that's blown off him, and he's going, I've got nothing, you've took my cloak.
Yeah.
But he didn't realize he was still holding on to that. He said, you need to be completely naked.
Right.
Once you're completely naked and surrender, then you can connect to this higher force and bring it through. It's a great it's a good reason to get up in the morning.
Yeah. Well, Geoff, I love you. Thank you.
Thank you. I love you too.
It's been, like I said, an honor and a privilege to know you remotely and now virtually through talking to you on this little talk here. I'll be in touch. And I do want to extend, I think I've said it before, if you ever need anything artistically, I'm here for you. I do like everything from book design to anything that you could possibly need on the artistic front. I'm here for you. If there's anything I can ever do, please let me know.
And if you're ever in England and you want to meet, I'm living in Stratford.
Okay.
In Stratford-on-Avon. If you want to come and have a morning with me, it's an open invite. Come and have a morning. I'll take you for a cup of coffee. We can go and have a walk. You know, if it's probably unlikely that you'll be in England anytime soon, but if you're ever over here and you want to meet, then just let Gabriella know and we'll get up together and have a coffee.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Geoff.
Okay, mate.
Till next time.
See you soon.